Some men spend their entire lives trying to impress, trying to please, trying to prove their worth every single day. But what almost nobody realizes is that the moment men stop trying is the moment everything changes. And the craziest part? The more a man chases validation, the more he slowly loses himself in the process. But there's a silent moment, dangerous, almost invisible, where everything shifts. The moment men stop trying is the moment. Everything changes isn't just a phrase. It's a mental shift that very few men understand early in life. So go ahead and subscribe to the channel right now, because here we talk about male psychology, relationships, behavior, and self-improvement in a deep and real way, without all the fake motivational nonsense. And hey, we're on the road to 1,000 subscribers, so be part of this journey from the beginning. Topic 1. The exhaustion of performing all the time. Some men spend so much time trying to look strong that they completely forget what it feels like to truly relax. They wake up thinking about money, status, their body, women, respect, performance. Everything becomes an invisible test. Even hanging out with friends starts feeling like some silent competition where nobody admits they're exhausted. But everybody is. And the worst part? Most of them don't even realize they've been acting all the time. A lot of men were taught from a young age that their value depends on what they can provide. If he produces, he matters. If he wins, he matters. If he impresses people, he matters. But there's a brutal trap hidden inside that mindset. The more he tries to prove his worth to the world, the less time he has to figure out who he actually is. It's like an actor playing the same role for so many years that he forgets who he is off stage. And honestly, this happens way more often than people think. What's crazy is that some of the most exhausted men aren't even physically overworked. The exhaustion comes from the mind, the constant pressure to reply fast, sound confident, post the right picture, say the right thing, never show weakness. Some guys walk into a coffee shop already wondering how everyone around them sees them. It sounds small, but living in that constant emotional self-awareness slowly drains your peace. And eventually, a painful question starts showing up in his mind. What if I just stopped trying so hard? Topic 2. The dangerous addiction to female validation. There's something a lot of men never admit, not even to themselves. A huge part of their mood depends on female attention. If she replies fast, he feels important. If she leaves him on scene and disappears, his whole day changes. And this doesn't happen because he's weak. It happens because little by little, he was conditioned to believe that being desired is the ultimate proof of masculine value. Without even noticing, validation became emotional fuel. The problem is that this kind of reward affects the brain almost like gambling. An unexpected text, a compliment, a like, a little sign of interest. All of it creates tiny hits of excitement and anticipation. Then the cycle begins. He checks his phone nonstop, replays old conversations in his head, analyzes every signal, creates imaginary scenarios, and while he thinks he's just interested in someone, he's actually handing over his emotional stability to another person. It hits hard the first time a man realizes that. And maybe the most dangerous part is that a lot of men build their entire lives around this need without realizing it. They buy things to impress people, change their personality to be liked, fake confidence while secretly starving for approval. Some even start going to the gym, making money, chasing success. But deep down, everything still revolves around the hope of finally being chosen by someone. And sooner or later, an uncomfortable realization starts creeping in. The more your happiness depends on other people's attention, the less control you actually have over your own mind. Topic 3. Why desperation repels everyone. There's a strange irony about human relationships that very few men understand early in life. The more desperately someone wants to be chosen, the less attractive they become. And it's not because they lack value. A lot of the time, they're smart, hardworking, loyal, even physically attractive. The problem is the energy behind the emotional neediness. People can feel when a man is trying too hard, even if he hides it behind jokes, overkindness, or fake confidence. That's why some men keep saying, "I do everything right," and it still never works. But sometimes doing everything right is exactly the problem. Replying too fast, always being available, constantly trying to impress, agreeing with everything just to avoid rejection. Little by little, he stops acting naturally and starts operating in approval mode. And the worst part is that it creates invisible pressure in every interaction. Nobody likes feeling responsible for someone else's emotional stability. That kind of pressure pushes people away. Ironically, many men only understand this after painful rejection, after being ignored, replaced, or emotionally drained from trying to force connections. And then something almost shocking happens. The moment they stop chasing so hard, people sometimes start moving toward them naturally. Not because they learned some secret technique, but because they finally stopped radiating emotional desperation all the time. And that's exactly when they begin to understand the silent power of stepping back and observing more. Topic 4. The silent power of pulling back. There's a quiet moment in some men's lives where everything starts changing. It's not dramatic. No epic soundtrack playing in the background. He simply stops. Stops sending the first text every time. Stops trying to convince people of his worth. Stops chasing attention like he owes something to the world. And at first, that silence feels uncomfortable, because he realizes how addicted his mind was to movement, validation, and constant reactions. But that's exactly where something powerful begins to happen. When a man emotionally pulls back, he starts seeing who genuinely values his presence and who only liked the energy he kept giving away. It's like lowering the volume in a loud room for the first time. Suddenly, he notices subtle manipulation, one-sided relationships, even friendships where he was always the one carrying everything. And honestly, that realization hurts more than a lot of breakups do. But mixed into that pain is a weird kind of freedom. Because once he stops wasting energy trying to control how people see him, he finally has mental space to observe his own life clearly. Some men start training for themselves for the first time. Others disappear from social media for a while. Some return to old hobbies, start reading again, focus on their career, or simply learn how to sit in silence without anxiety. And somewhere in that process, almost without noticing, he discovers something he was never taught before. Maybe peace doesn't come from being desired by others. Maybe it comes from genuinely enjoying your own company. Topic 5. The first time he enjoys his own company. For a lot of men, being alone feels like punishment at first. The silence feels uncomfortable. The lack of messages feels uncomfortable. Not having someone validating his existence creates this strange emptiness, like something is missing all the time. So he keeps himself distracted nonstop. Social media, random conversations, shallow relationships, overworking, any distraction will do. Because deep down, many men never learned how to simply exist without being noticed by somebody. But there's a silent turning point hidden inside all of this. A moment where he slowly realizes that his own company isn't actually that bad. Maybe it happens during a walk without his phone, during a late-night workout alone, a short solo trip, or maybe just sitting at home after a long day without feeling the urge to chase attention. And man, when that happens, something shifts in his energy. Because a man who can sit alone without feeling empty starts making completely different decisions. He stops accepting emotional breadcrumbs just to avoid loneliness. Stops forcing conversations that have no reciprocity. Stops tolerating disrespect simply because he's afraid of losing someone. And ironically, the less desperately he needs people around him, the lighter and calmer his presence becomes. People feel that. Some men spend years trying to look confident without realizing that real confidence is born right here, the moment he can sit alone with his own thoughts, without wanting to escape from his own mind. And that's where the transformation begins, the kind that can't be faked anymore. Topic 6. The masculine energy that can't be faked. There's a massive difference between a man who looks confident and a man who has genuinely found peace within himself. The first guy usually talks too much, tries too hard to impress, forces his presence everywhere, constantly needs attention. The second guy doesn't seem interested in proving anything to anybody. And weirdly enough, that's exactly what makes people notice him. Because real masculine energy doesn't come from performance. It comes from emotional stability. From being the kind of man who doesn't panic just because validation didn't show up immediately. You can see it in small details. The way he walks into a room without needing to dominate it. The calm way he speaks. His ability to listen without desperately trying to impress people. Some men spend years copying alpha male behavior from the internet, while still radiating anxiety underneath it all. Because confidence isn't rehearsed body language. It's not a deep voice. It's not pretending not to care. Real confidence shows up when a man no longer feels the need to convince people of his worth. And maybe that's one of the most freeing things a man can ever understand. People can feel when someone is genuinely comfortable with themselves. It's almost instinctive. An emotionally grounded man changes the atmosphere without even trying. He becomes more selective about who enters his life, learns how to say no without guilt, stops accepting shallow relationships just to avoid loneliness. And the more he builds that quiet inner peace, the more he realizes the real transformation never started on the outside. It started the moment he stopped abandoning himself just to be enough for everybody else. Topic 7. The moment. Everything changes. Most men spend years believing that life will finally change once they achieve something big. More money, more women, more status, more recognition. But for many men, the real turning point arrives in a much quieter way. It happens when he realizes he spent way too much time chasing approval, while abandoning himself in the process. And honestly, that realization hits hard, because suddenly he understands it was never just about relationships. It was never only about women. It was about constantly trying to earn love, respect, and validation, like he needed permission to exist in peace. Some men spend so much time trying to be chosen by others, that they never stop to ask whether they even like the life they're building for themselves. And that question changes everything, because for the first time, it forces him to look inward without distractions. And that's when the transformation begins. The kind nobody can fake for long. He no longer feels the need to instantly reply just to maintain attention. He doesn't panic when someone pulls away anymore. He stops forcing connections where there's no reciprocity. His energy changes because, finally, his life stops revolving around the constant need for approval. And ironically, that's exactly when people begin noticing his presence for real. Not because he became someone else, but because, for the first time in a long time, he finally became himself again. Conclusion. At the end of the day, maybe the biggest prison for a lot of men was never money, looks, or success. Maybe it was the constant need to prove their worth to everybody around them. So here's the question. How many decisions in your life were actually yours? And how many were made just to gain approval? How many times did you abandon yourself trying to be enough for other people? Because the truth is, the man who learns how to be okay with himself starts seeing the world completely differently. And maybe that's the transformation you've been searching for all along without realizing it. Now I want to hear from you. When was the moment you realized you were trying too hard? Drop your experience in the comments because I genuinely want to read it. And if this video helped you in any way, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because there's still a lot here that can completely change the way you see yourself, your relationships, and your life.